Hello everyone. Today I will be giving a breakdown of what penetration testing is, along with its key components and why we need them to create a good security plan. So what is a penetration test? A penetration test is a simulated cyber attack on a computer system, network, or web application for the purpose of identifying security vulnerabilities before malicious threat actors have a chance to exploit them. Penetration tests are conducted by cybersecurity professionals who attempt to breach systems using various tools, techniques, and methods that real attackers would use. So why do we need penetration testing? Cybercrime has had a significant economic impact, up to $9.5 trillion annually as of 2024, and is continuing to rise. It is better for organizations to prepare ahead of time for cyber attacks rather than being reactive and facing the consequences. A penetration test is important for a well-structured security plan. Even with the latest and greatest technologies such as firewalls, intrusion detection or prevention systems, and anti-malware protection, attackers can still slip by the system defenses, which is why penetration testing is very important. Testing the network in this way will allow for a thorough analysis of internal and external systems to find vulnerabilities with the goal of addressing them in the process. Penetration testing can be used to assess the cyber health and resiliency of an organization's network. Companies recognize the constant threat of cyber attacks and often take a proactive approach to security by adhering to best practices and procedures. This approach includes methods such as patch and configuration management, employee training and awareness, and comprehensive security education to help prevent social engineering attacks. Many security controls are designated to address these key areas. There are three main types of security controls that organizations can implement. The first type are administrative controls. These are security measures that are implemented to monitor organizational compliance with policies and procedures. These can take the form of employee training, hiring and termination of employees, as well as creating business continuity and incident response plans. The next category is logical or technical controls. These security controls help monitor, control, and restrict access to data and systems, typically within digital or virtual environments. Examples include authentication mechanisms, firewalls, intrusion detection or prevention systems, and encryption. The third category is physical controls. Physical controls monitor, detect, and restrict access to highly sensitive physical area or assets. These can be in the form of barriers, biometrics, or key locks on a server room door. The door may even be covered by cameras as another layer of physical security control. These controls should be applied with the principle of least privilege. This means that the objects should be allocated the minimum necessary privileges to perform their role. By performing a well-structured penetration test to simulate a real-life cyber attack, you can test how well a network can withstand a cyber event. It's important to note that a vulnerability scan and a penetration test are two different concepts. A vulnerability scan will scan computers, networks, and applications to find vulnerabilities or system weaknesses. A penetration test will use a vulnerability scan, but will take the process further by attempting to exploit the vulnerabilities found during the scan. A penetration test is important for a well-structured security plan. Testing the network in this way will allow for a thorough analysis of internal and external systems to find vulnerabilities with the goal of addressing them in the process. One of the key components of a penetration test is analyzing risk. One of the primary goals of a penetration test is to reduce the overall risk of an organization by taking proactive measures to reduce the vulnerabilities. The method for determining risk is risk equals the threat times the vulnerability. Threat represents something such as malware or a natural disaster that can accidentally or intentionally exploit a vulnerability and cause undesirable results. A vulnerability is defined as a weakness or flaw, such as a software bug, system flaw, or human error. A vulnerability can be exploited by a threat. A risk analysis is a security process used to assess risk damage that can affect an organization. Here's an example of determining how different levels of anti-malware protection on a system will alter the risk. In the table on the right, we have a system using a free antivirus with no automatic updates. We have a system using a paid antivirus with automatic updates. And we have a system using a unified threat management appliance with automatic updates. In each case here, there is a 100% chance of malware being a threat. The vulnerability rating represents how easy the malware will infect the system. Then, using the risk formula, you can calculate the level of risk. One of the primary goals of a penetration test is to reduce the overall risk of an organization by taking proactive measures to reduce the vulnerabilities. Risk analysis is part of a larger process called risk management, which is a circular process of identifying, assessing, analyzing, and responding to risk. Pen testing is a key component in managing risk. An organization may choose to carry out a pen test in whichever way they please, but it is best to use a structured approach. Threats to systems will always exist, but we cannot control the risk. Instead, what we can do is minimize the risk or control the vulnerabilities, which will lead to reducing the overall risk. When using a structured approach to pen testing, each step will serve a purpose with the goal of testing an infrastructure's defenses by identifying and exploiting any known vulnerabilities. The steps taken during a penetration testing process are planning and scoping, reconnaissance, scanning, gaining access, maintaining access, covering tracks, analysis, and reporting. Let's further break down the penetration testing process. First, we have planning and scoping. Planning and scoping is when the team meets with the stakeholders to determine a plan for the pen test. This meeting will address the rules of engagement, budget, and any technical constraints, along with the types of assessments and selection of targets. Next is the scanning process. Scanning is a critical phase as it provides more information about available network resources. Scanning identifies live hosts, listening ports, and running services. In addition, the team uses enumeration to gather more detailed information on usernames, network shares, services, and DNS details. Next is reconnaissance. Reconnaissance focuses on gathering as much information about the target as possible. This process will include using open source intelligence tools while searching for information on the internet, such as social media networks or company websites. Next is gaining access. Gaining access occurs after a team has gathered information on the network. In this phase, the team will attempt to gain access to the system. Once the team is in, they will see how deep into the network they can go and attempt to access protected resources. After gaining access, the next step is maintaining access. Maintaining access is once the team is in the system, the goal is to maintain access undetected for as long as possible. Next is covering tracks. Covering tracks consists of removing any trace of evidence that the team was in the system, including executable files, rootkits, logs, and any user accounts that were used during the exercise. Next is the analysis. Analysis occurs after the team has completed the exercise and will go through the results of all activities, analyze the findings, and derive a summary of the risk rating. The final step is reporting. Reporting will deliver the results and any remediation suggestions to the stakeholders, along with a realistic timeline of reducing risk and implementing corrective actions. What is important to note is that the process used by penetration testers and threat actors are nearly identical. The threat actor has a main goal of altering the integrity of the system and/or causing harm. They are sometimes called unauthorized hackers, which is a hacker operating with malicious intent.